Hello, and welcome to Replay Value. Are original stories superior to adaptations? Short answer, not necessarily. Long answer, well, as much as I can fit in the 5 hours I have to make this video. Yes, it's that special Analysis Blitz time of the year where the winning submission was to talk about adaptation because I haven't done enough of that over the course of 2019. But as opposed to giving examples of how we adapt, links below if you're more interested in that, let's take a more comparative viewpoint this time that will hopefully build into my grand unifying theory of adaptation that I've been putting off since time immemorial. When I consider my favorite anime series, longtime viewers won't be surprised to learn that there's no dividing line between made-for-anime versus adapted works. There's a pretty eclectic mix of mediums of origin too as far as adaptations go. Hyoka, originally a novel, Steins Gate a VN, Kekai Sensen a manga, with material like Code Geass, Psycho Pass, and Gurren on the original side. Even as you get to the anime that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, there's still no difference. Ulysses, which is a light novel adaptation, and Revisions, original. I'm still trying to scrub my brain from the fact that I watched those, so clearly there's nothing inherently better or worse about original stories versus adaptations. They both have the potential to be masterpieces or trash bins. But there is something different in the process of arriving at that outcome, and to determine that, we're going to get into the pros and cons of originals and adaptations from a production perspective. The major point I want to focus on is the inherently different frameworks at play between trying to adapt a work and having an original project. One of the major benefits for the adaptation side is that the project they're adapting, in most cases, already has a critical response. Unless the works are being published at the same time, a la 2001: A Space Odyssey, the creative team behind bringing a new Shonen Jump manga to anime already should have a general idea of what is engaging about the work to the audience and whether the original concept is engaging at all. If the gist is that people like it because of the battle scenes, your music, sound design, and animation need to be on point to highlight and empower those moments. Alternatively, if it's due to the great characters and emotional moments, the show should really slow down the pace to let those moments sink in, as a controlled runtime doesn't allow the audience the same freedom to ponder as the end of a chapter does, for example. Original projects don't have this luxury. They have no idea if their mafia drama is going to take the anime world by storm or whether it's going to disappear into the annals of summer 2016, which is to say if the concept is engaging or not. And they also can't course correct based on the critical response if their read on what the core point that the audience should find engaging is wrong. The course correction point is kind of irrelevant if the creative team isn't willing to make changes to the source or their execution on said material. More about that in Miss Muse number 4. But in a perfect theoretical world, that is an advantage that adaptations have over original projects, which we see in Western films all the time. And an anime example of that would be Black and White in Kekai Sensen as a way to produce a climax at the end of the first season and make a thematic point, whereas Fate Apocrypha kinda just keeps on keeping on with its source. Or alternatively, how Darling in the Franxx couldn't see the post-episode 16 wave coming, whereas the current manga adaptation has been able to course correct as a result of seeing that critical reaction. But where original works benefit from that lack of a framework is that there's zero expectations for what that story must include. A great theoretical example of this is if I read a chapter of a manga and interpret it in a certain way, how that might be interpreted differently by the creative team behind adapting that work. And when it comes to watch that scene in the anime, my reading could suddenly disappear. If there's no original work, there's no lens that I can possibly be viewing the work through that might cause me to reject the adaptation or be disappointed. And that's just a difference in interpretation, how the elements are presented, and to say nothing about plot and character elements being just straight up removed from the adaptation. I think visual novels have this the worst, though I am far from an expert on them, because of their tendency to have multiple routes, that when the time comes to be adapted, there's either the true route, which can leave out key details and bother other people who preferred other routes, or some kind of multiple routes thing which can result in no one feeling satisfied because it doesn't have the time to do any of them justice. And even if one person thinks that the adaptation is perfect and recognizes why certain elements were removed, you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be a forum post somewhere complaining about how the Harry Potter movies forgot to include the side plot about X, Y, and Z. There's also the flip side, where the adaptation includes everything at the expense of its pacing. One episode of Kanata no Astra has 3 shocking reveals in it that happen back to back to back, which totally messes with the structure of the episode, and I assume was done in order to keep the order of material true to the manga. With an original project, what you see is what you get. And that doesn't mean it's free from criticism, but it does mean that it will be criticized on its own merits entirely and not on how it fares as an adaptation of the source material. At the end of the day, though, the only thing that truly matters in making an original or adapted work great is the execution on the part of the team making it. Shocking, I know. A great original work is not a guarantee of a great adaptation. Just look at Quince or Index for proof of that. Whereas something that may need a bit of polish can become widely appreciated. Enter One Punch Man, where my friends refuse to read the webcomic because they think it's gross, but think the anime is the GOAT. Because the reality is that when we're making the switch from one medium to another, there are so many decisions that need to be made about how to best carry over the core points, what to include and what to leave behind, and how to best implement the aspects of the medium that did not exist in the original's case, like sound or motion, that to make something great requires a clear creative vision. You can have half a page of internal monologue with just the character's face regarding a fight in a manga, because the expression of time there doesn't work the same as it does in a 23-minute episode. To adapt that requires a solution to convey the same gist in a way that is either visually engaging or something else entirely. Because as that same dialogue takes a while to say out loud, what was originally half a page that took a second to read becomes a minute and a half, which may very well throw off the pace of the anime. That doesn't mean it's always going to work out. Some people like how Amagami SS handled its multiple routes, others don't. But decisions have to be made, and preferably they're considering the core of the work as they're trying to express it, as opposed to some impossible dream of a one-to-one adaptation, because again, the nature of a medium change makes that impossible. As an example, Kekai Sensen's thematic decisions in the adaptation were informed by the story that the creative team was trying to tell in that world, and it's a far better story for it, just as Kekai's original in the manga had different decisions for the sake of that story. Is this too short a video for the points I wanted to make? Almost definitely. I can already tell that I'm gonna have to get started on my unifying theory to clear up a lot of the stuff that I began to hint at here. I didn't even get to my points about specificity and why that kills the one-to-one dream, or why I think runtime is such a crucial part to understanding TV and film compared to reading a book or manga, but that will have to wait till another time. Hopefully this all, or mostly, made sense given the time nature of this challenge, and if not, hey, that's for future me to deal with. Which brings us back to the opening question. Are original stories superior to adaptations? No, because as it is almost 100% of the time, it all comes back to execution.